Make sure we're all good here. Yep, we're all good. Okay. Um, let's what do you want to talk about first? I talk about who
Uh,
gonna win, who
well, any quick reactions to the truck before people file in here? Any quick reactions to the truck or Xfinity races, and will any of that carry over to today?
I the truck race, I was very vocal at people not being upset that John Hunter Nemechek didn't win it. And obviously, Daniel Hemrick, it was a great race yesterday, I thought. If the cup race today ends like that, I think that's going to be awesome. And I think the storyline so far this weekend is underdogs winning. Neither Hemrick or Rhodes were the favorites. So, you know, would it be nice to see an underdog today and not Kyle Larson? Because Kyle Larson's the heavy favorite. He's on the pole by like 0.2 of a second. Like he blew everyone out of the water in qualifying this weekend. I know there's concerns from us, his long run speed and whether he's going to have it, but short run speed, he's got the field covered, I think. But yeah, so that's what my takeaways are from what's happened so far this weekend. I thought last night was a good ending. It was a good race. Obviously, I didn't like who won, but you can't fault, or I can't be mad at the race because Daniel Hemrick won. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's pretty clear Cindric and Hemrick were the two best cars. Maybe you could argue John Hunter Nemechek was on the short run there in the Xfinity race, but we saw the two best cars go there in the truck series. I definitely don't think we saw necessarily the best truck win. Obviously John Hunter Nemechek had that problem right from the very start and just got behind all day and never got up front. But if things don't get crazy with the leaders, I think in the Cup Series, I should say, I think it'll come down to, will it be a short run in the end? Like you were saying, Larson's absolutely been just destroying on the short run. Practice, qualifying, super fast on the short run. But if it comes to long runs, we've seen the JGR long run speed in that Hemrick Xfinity car. We've seen it in practice with Truex actually outpacing Larson over the latter 10 laps of a 15-lap run. And that's just a 15-lap run. We can expect 90-lap runs or something like that, close to 90-lap runs if there's no cautions. So it remains to be seen. Will this race come down to a short run and restarts at the end, which I think will favor Larson and Elliott, or will it favor long runs, which I think will favor Truex and Hamlin? That's what we don't know. Now, of course, things can change as the race goes on as well. As teams adjust the cars, do you adjust for the short run? Do you adjust for the long run, etc.? But right now it seems to be Hendrick with the short run speed, JGR with the long run speed. And obviously, as we talked about on the podcast, 2 Hendrick cars in the Final Four with 2 teammates not in, and 2 JGR cars in the Final Four with 2 teammates not in. So all square there as far as the teammate front.
Yeah, and we got Byron starting third, and I tweeted about it last night that he's there to hold up the Gibbs cars a little bit from getting to his teammates. But we did have practice this week, and it's hard to gauge. A fuel run here is 90 something laps. They'll probably go about 90 laps on a fuel run if it goes green, and 15 laps was about the longest most people ran. Brad Keselowski went, he did a really long run. Blaney went for 20 laps, but everyone else pretty much maxed out at a 15-lap run. You mentioned Truex. What we both liked about Truex's speed was minimal fall off from his 5 to 10 to 15. It was consistent. Now, the 5-lap run that he made was so much slower than everybody else though. Like he has no short run speed, and that's why he's starting 12th today. And 12th was actually, pretty good, a pretty good lap for him. So I think that team has it figured out on the short or on the long run. Short run, I think, is what's going to really hurt him. Hamlin looked decently consistent. Honestly, I thought Chase Elliott had very good short. I thought he was very well balanced short run and long run. And then obviously Larson was just so fast on the short run and really fell off on the long run. How much stock do you think we should put into that? Because of how drastic, Larson's drop off was. Now, my opinion on it is because Chase's wasn't as dramatic, I think those two are going to have similar speed. And I think Larson's car is going to not have that much of a drop off in the actual race compared to what we saw in practice. And then he's obviously going to be, a stud on short runs. So that's where I'm at with that. And like you said, I think Gibbs is going to be great on long runs.
Yeah. I mean, the thing with Larson in practice, he dropped from 0 to 5. From 0 to 5, he was fast. He dropped to 6 to 10, his time dropped. And from 11 to 16, it dropped even further. Whereas, like you said, Chase dropped lefts. But the other thing that concerns me with Larson and his long run speed is they made 3 runs. And it took them 3 runs to put up a 15-lap average that was still slower than Truex's 15-lap average, where he only made 2 runs. So they kept coming in and working on that car, trying different things, making some tweaks. So I'm not positive. It's going to be really tough to say. And I just think a lot of books have overreacted to the qualifying, to
Absolutely.
the short run speed that Larson and Chase Elliott have shown, because if you look at some of these odds, they're bonkers. I mean, Truex is 10-1 to win at Circa. He's 20-1 to win at Westgate in Vegas. And whereas Larson and Elliott at Westgate are -115 for Larson. He's favored to win the race at Westgate. And +160 for Chase Elliott. Denny Hamlin is 16-1 and Truex is 20-1. What the hell?
Those are, I wish I lived in
bonkers.
Vegas, because I'd be all over that,
Yeah. So that's absolutely nutty. But that's some wild stuff there. So I think books have completely overreacted to that. Like we were talking about on Stacking Denny's, not overreacting to practice, because we know we both in the past have done it in DFS. I think the odds makers have completely overreacted. You know why? Because we haven't had many practices this year. Yep. So it's something they've forgotten about and haven't had to adjust too much. And it's the championship race, so there was all this extra whatever. But I mean, I still think these odds are completely bonkers that some of these books are setting out there. Now, there's other ones that are totally fine, totally normal. You're seeing 7, 8, 9 ones on Truex. I think that's still a little bit of an overreaction, but totally fine. But I don't see why they should be that far off from the opening lines, honestly.
Right. And one thing I liked about Truex, I'm trying not to jinx him too much this weekend, but the fact that they only went out there and they only did 2 relatively short runs tells me they know what they have and they're confident as hell. We've seen it before. Like when we used to have practice, we'd see guys go out there and end their practice session early because they're like, I'm that happy with this car. This is the same car that Truex ran in the spring and dominated with in the second half. So I like that as, for Truex going into today. DFS wise, him starting 12th, as far as I'm concerned, you're building DFS lineups today with 2 of the 4, correct? Like, are we on the same page there? Unless we get a Larson complete domination, which I don't see happening, I think you're going to at least 2 of the 4, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't go 2 in a good chunk of your lineups if you're multi-entering. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, if you're multi-entering, I definitely think 2 of your 6 roster spots should probably be filled with Final 4 drivers. Now, the other thing is, because there's such strong correlation in the practice speeds with Larson and Elliott and as teammates, and then Hamlin and Truex as teammates, I think this is a good way to stack, would be to play the teammates, because either the short run thing is going to be right or the long run thing is going to be right. You know what I mean? So I think this is a situation where if you're building in the Fantasy Labs optimizer, for example, and I should mention, I submitted my Fantasy Labs projections within 30 minutes after qualifying yesterday to Fantasy Labs. They had an issue on their end getting them uploaded. I woke up at 7 a.m. this morning, Pacific Coast time, and found out they were still showing blanks. So I messaged them. They should be, if they're not up yet, they should be up very shortly. So that's not on my end, just putting it out there. But in the Fantasy Labs optimizer, you can build correlations. So if you can do something where it says, like, if you want to play Martin Truex Jr., increase Denny Hamlin by 25%. And then if you have Denny Hamlin, increase Martin Truex Jr. by 25%. I think that's a smart correlation. I think the same goes for Elliott and Larson. Alternatively, you could say, if you have Larson, reduce Hamlin or whatever. But I think it's more important to ride the positive correlation, because I think those teammates are going to be positively correlated in their performance just based off of what we saw in practice speeds and what we saw in qualifying. So I would probably try to correlate the teammates with each other in my lineups. So you could still have lineups with Truex and Larson, because you might have short run speed with Larson, long run speed with Truex, but there's just that's not correlation. That's just like, that's standard. But if there was something like at the end of the race where a lot of restarts happened, maybe Larson and Elliott would be right up there 1-2 at the end, and a lot of fastest laps. Or if there was a long run right at the end, both Hamlin and Truex might finish 1-2 with a lot of fastest laps towards the stage 3, something like that. So it's certainly possible to play. I'm not saying don't play. Not once did I say don't play Truex and Larson together, or Hamlin and Larson, or Hamlin and Elliott, or Truex and Elliott together. I'm just saying increase the correlation with the teammates, because if they're on the same setup, the same long versus short run stuff, then at the very end of the race, their finishing position is more likely to be correlated, as well as if we have a lot of restarts, then the short run guys will have more fastest lap correlation. And if we have a lot of long runs in these stages, the longer run guys will have more correlation. So that's the way I would set it up. I would bump up the correlation between teammates. I don't know, where you want, 10%, 25%, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And I talked about it, in my article. I have Larson as a cash play today, and I have Elliott as a tournament play, because I don't think a lot of people are going to combine first and second. I think they're going to go to Larson and Truex because it works really well salary wise. You get the place differential with Truex, you get the dominator potential with Larson. But I like you said, I think there's, stacking the teammates is a very good option here, and going 1-2, like. I remember back in the first Richmond race, that was the first race this year that, we went through a long streak where the top 2 starters did not do well. That was the first race where everybody's like, do we finally play, the top 2? Do we only play 1? Do we play none? It was Hamlin and Truex, and Hamlin and Truex dominated that race. Those were the 2 optimal starting first and second. They both led like 150 laps or something. And that was the day. And I think Bowman won that race, didn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think this week? So my optimal projection.
I just want to throw out there real quick. We were just talking about stacking Denny. Just saying it. Just had to throw it out there. Go ahead.
So my projections are kind of, projecting like a kind of a 3-dom race, and it's my optimal lineup according to my projections is actually throwing Larson, Elliott, and Truex all into one lineup and then punting at the bottom. Is this punt week? Because I think there's opportunity to punt with Truex starting 12th. That's the big factor here, is Truex starting 12th, because you're getting what should be a top 4 car starting 12th that can win, can lead laps, and he's underpriced. For what Truex is, he's underpriced this week.
Yeah, there is opportunity to punt, and if you do, it has to be, I think, with Truex. I don't think you're going to get a Larson, Hamlin, Elliott lineup that's going to win unless all 3 lead like 100 laps, each or something. Because it's only, it's not a 500 lap race. It's not a 400 lap race. I say it's air quote only a 312 lap race. It's still 312. So that's a lot more than some of these 267. And we do sometimes see 3 dominators, but I think we're probably leaning towards a 2 dominator race here. You can definitely do some 3 dominator lineups. And there is a tiny bit of place differential potential with Hamlin, but you're right. I think something like a Larson Elliott, Truex or a Larson Hamlin Truex even could work, just because there is that little extra place differential with Hamlin. So even let's say you do Larson Hamlin Truex, that leaves you with an average remaining of 5,700. So you definitely would need to find some kind of punt. So we'd have to talk about our favorite punts. For me, that would probably be Timmy Hill starting in 39th, or maybe Quinn Huff. I can never say his name, starting in 35th. Where would you lean if I was talking like below BJ McLeod punts?
I wouldn't be on the Timmy Hill train, because I'm not certain that car gets off the starting grid. Like, they weren't even able to complete a lap. Like, I think that car is absolute junk. I would, my top would probably be Quinn Houff. I think it's going to depend on how much salary you have left. So I just did a mock lineup here with Larson, Hamlin, and Truex, 2 guys in the 6K range, and all I have left is 30 or 45 to get Joey Gase, which I don't hate. But my number 1 would probably be Quinn Houff, and then Garrett Smithley. I think.
My model actually says Smithley as well. So I'd go Houff and Smithley then if we're taking out Timmy Hill. But definitely Garrett Smithley would be my third if Timmy Hill is a non-factor. Now, I'm not 100% sure of that. I mean, I would definitely go Smithley after Houff, even though my model has him slightly higher than Houff. I still think just there's more speed for Quinn Houff overall this year.
Yeah, and I went back and then I was looking at practice data from the punts, and Smithley and a couple of those guys only ran 10 laps, and I just don't like that when we're dealing with those junk cars. Like, Quinn Houff went out there and ran 25 laps. That tells me, they're not going to start in park. And I know starting parks don't technically exist anymore, but they definitely do.
I mean, there's always the option of doing something like Mcleod, Alfredo, or whoever, and then a McDowell or a Priest. It's pretty ugly, because if you go Larson, Hamlin, Truex, you've got to drop below 5,700 for at least one of your drivers, because the average remaining is 5,700. So let's say you do BJ McLeod, then you have 5,950 remaining. You can do Priest at 5,800, and then you're choosing between LaJoy, McDowell, Haley, Alfredo, something like that. Let's say McDowell, right? So then you're doing a lineup that's McLeod, Priest, and McDowell. It just feels terrible. Like, you don't even get to anybody in the 6K range. So I feel like you really do need to drop below BJ McLeod, and it just sucks. Like, let's say you go Quinn Houff instead. Pick your poison between Priest or McDowell, but at least that leaves you with another $800-900, something like that, to play around with. You can go up to like $6,700 if you did McDowell. You could go up to $6,700, which would get you either a Custer who starts 7th, no way, but a Busher who starts 26th at $6,400. So that's a little more palatable to me. I'd rather have Busher than Priest, despite Busher starting 5 spots forward. I'd rather have Busher than Priest, but still doesn't feel great. So I don't love the 3 dominator build. I would much rather go with a 2 dominator build and find some other guys that can finish up there. Maybe an Almarola 8,100, maybe a Bubba Wallace 7,700, maybe an Austin Dillon 7,300, or we talked about Busher. So, and I don't hate McDowell or Priest as plays. I'm just saying I don't want to play McDowell and Priest and Alfredo or something like that. You know what I mean? Because they're all negatively correlated with each other, because they're kind of in the same boat where they're bottom middle tier cars starting kind of in the bottom middle portion of the back, and not all of them are going to move up to 15th. If any of them do, that'd be a surprise in and of itself. So it's going to be really hard for 2 or 3 of them to do that.
Mm-hmm. Another guy that's underpriced is Joey Logano, and he's also, like, we talked about the books and the odds. You can get Joey Logano at up to 50-1. I've seen him at 50-1 today. Like, he's very, very good at Phoenix. I know that that he's not in the championship 4. Speaking of Penske overall, after completely whiffing at Martinsville last week, they brought their A game this week. I'll tell you that. Blaney looks good. Keselowski looks good. Logano looks the worst of the 3, but as I said before, when teammates have speed, the other one finds the speed on race day. Trust me. Logano, I don't think is going to be the slowest Penske car today. But he's $8,900. He starts 10th. Like, to me, if you're not doing a 3-down build, you're at least throwing Logano in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, if you're not doing a 3-down build, like even if you did Larson and Hamlin, 2 most expensive, Logano at 8,900 is such a smash play because he's finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the 4 non-Martinsville short flats this year. Again, if you listen to Stacking Denny's, I don't really consider Martinsville when looking at Phoenix because they are the most different of the short flat tracks. And my model doesn't pull in any Martinsville data. I let my model decide all the data for itself. It's a machine learning model, so there's algorithms to determine what other data, what other features you pull in that are most statistically significant. And it doesn't pull in Martinsville. So it does pull in Richmond and New Hampshire, obviously, as well as Phoenix. And of those 3 tracks, there's been 4 races this year. Logano's finished 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th and has one of the top average green flag speeds in those 4 tracks, right up there with like Hamlin and Truex. So, I think Logano is absolutely a smash play this week if you're going 2 dominators, because 8,900 now as the 3rd driver instead of 10,400 as Truex being the 3rd driver, or even if you went Larson Truex, which I kind of like because you get the short run with Larson, as somebody in the comments mentioned there, the long run with Truex. So if you're going away from one of these correlated plays, and even if you're just going Larson, Truex, and Logano, now you have 6,400 remaining average per driver. So you can throw a McDowell or a Priest or a Haley Alfredo type in there. I'm just going to say Michael McDowell for whatever reason, just 5,700. Now all of a sudden you have 6,750 average. You could throw in your Chris Buescher, and then you have 7,100. You can throw in Eric Jones, Ryan Newman, or Daniel Suarez. Now, if you really want to get creative, I mean, I really like trying to reach up to Austin Dillon there at 7,300. So maybe instead of McDowell or Buescher, maybe instead of McDowell, you do something like an Alfredo or a BJ McLeod type play. And that gives you a lot more wiggle room. Or maybe instead of Larson, you do the correlation with Denny Hamlin. So you have Hamlin, Truex, Logano, Buescher, Dillon, and pick your poison of Priest or McDowell. Kind of like that a lot more.
Yeah. One thing I want to note, you mentioned similar tracks. So you look at the 4 races, you look at the first Phoenix race, the 2 Richmond races, and the New Hampshire race. Kyle Larson has 0 top 5s this year on this track type, which that's something you have to keep in mind. But you pointed out Austin Dillon, he's $7,300. Both Austin Dillon and Redick have been low on speed this week. Redick starts 20th, Austin Dillon in 23rd. Mm-hmm. They've both been very good on this track type, though. Austin Dillon, top 17 in all 4. Redick was, we've seen him run like top 5 at Phoenix here before and then wreck it, but top 15 at both New Hampshire and the 2nd Richmond race. If you do something like, if you do a Larson, Truex, Logano, you could go Austin Dillon, Chase Briscoe, and Michael McDowell, and boom, there's your lineup if you wanted to go that route. Do you think? I do think at his salary though, like I think Austin Dillon's a great play, especially for his salary, because I don't think a lot of people are going to land on him. He's a little too expensive to get into a great build.
I agree with that. And you also mentioned Chase Briscoe. I think he's a really cool play because I think people will look at Buescher, who's priced right above him and starts a little further back, or they'll drop down to McDowell or Priest. So Chase Briscoe is going to be under-owned. And guess what? We've seen speed from Stewart-Haas Racing both this weekend and also at the short flat 750s. So Briscoe could surprise if he can just hang out on. I know this isn't his best track or his best track type, but if he can just hang out on the lead lap, he could, squeeze out a 15th place finish, something like that, and end up in the optimal lineup. So don't overlook Chase Briscoe. And I'm right there with you on Austin Dillon as well. It's you do mention the lack of speed, and we have a question in chat about Redick versus Almarola. I personally would go with Almarola. He's slayed at this track type, absolutely slayed. And so, I think this Redick or Almarola question is a really good one, but my model has Redick and Almarola almost exactly tied in terms of average finishing position. So if I look, they're both in the 14s in average finishing position. If you take starting position into account, it favors Redick slightly, but I do think my model undervalues Eric Almarola at these tracks because it's just so hard to build a model that's accurate for all 40 drivers or 39 drivers in this case, that because you're interpolating through a set of data points, there's going to be some that lie above and some that lie below. And Almarola is going to be one of those ones where the model is regressing a higher data point to the middle, in my opinion. And we've seen it time and again this year. I've said models undervaluing Almarola at short flats, models undervaluing Almarola at short flats. And that's just the way it's going to be, because you can't have a perfect model for every driver, because otherwise you're going to overfit and it's going to overpredict and give you even worse predictions in the long run. So you don't want to overfit. And so this is one where I think my model's undervaluing Almarola. If we also look at practice speeds, I don't see any major edge for Redick there. So I'm going to go with Almarola. Do you feel any differently here, Jordan?
No, I'm right there with you on Almarola, and it's just like you mentioned, every single time Almarola is better than expected. And we always say he's very good at short flat tracks, and then he comes out race day and he's even better. So the fact that, he's starting, where is he even starting? 18th. Like, I think Redick is too risky for me. He's always a risky play. Could he get up there? Do you need exposure if you're putting in 150 lineups? Yes. But if you're making 10 lineups and you're choosing between Redick or Almarola, take the price discount, go to Almarola and call it a day, because Redick, I think, might have a little bit higher upside, but a lot more risk, even though he's starting 2 spots further back. Going back to Chase Briscoe, I actually wrote him up as a tournament play today. My projections love him. I really like him. One thing to note about him, you remember the Indy Road Course where he wrecked Hamlin for the win and got parked? He hasn't finished worse than 22nd since then, and that is very noteworthy, because that Stewart-Haas sucks. Chase Briscoe's running really well right now. I love him in DraftKings today. Like,
yeah, I think in big tournaments, he's actually not as good a play as in high dollar tournaments, because he's gonna be even lower owned in high dollar or in single entry. But in the massive GPP, I still think he's a fine play. He's going to be lower owned than Busher. He's going to be lower owned than probably Priest and McDowell, because he falls right in between them in those weird situations. 100% agree with you there. And, he did finish 22nd earlier this year at Phoenix, which isn't great. But, if he improves upon that, I mean, that was one of his first few races in Cup ever. If he improves upon that, he's going to be a good play.
Yeah. And Donnie, good job reading my mind, because I was looking in that price range. Alex Bowman, $8,200, right there in between Tyler Redick and Eric Almarola, starting 14th. I think you're a little bit higher on Alex Bowman than I am. I'm just going off of he's not been great at Phoenix, but he's not been great at a lot of tracks, and he's come up with one. Do you think Alex Bowman versus Almarola, where would you rank those two, as opposed to, because getting a Hendrick driver starting 14th, I think they both have similar risk, and I actually think Bowman has higher upside. But I'm probably going to default to Almarola just because of the forced starting spot differential. Where are you at on that?
I think the forced starting spot differential plays a factor. My model actually gives Bowman some chance of fastest laps more than Almarola, which will factor in. And it also gives him some chance of laps led more than Almarola, which I think we can discount because we know the situation. My model can't completely deal with that situation. It's a unique set of circumstances that isn't applicable for a model. So it gives him a median of, or an average, I should say, of 7 laps led. I don't think Bowman's going to lead 7 laps. I don't think he's going to lead any, maybe 1 or 2 on a pit stop cycle, something like that. But I do think he has more fast lap potential than Eric Almarola. And that gives him more upside. My model likes his finishing position better than Almarola as well. So there's a 4-spot starting position differential and a 4-spot finishing position differential. But I do think, again, my model's undervaluing Almarola. So let's give Almarola credit for 4 extra finishing places. That gives him 8 extra points. That still puts him behind Bowman in both average and upside projection in my model. So I'm going to go with Bowman here, and I'm going to make the case for Bowman. He's been junk at Richmond his whole career, and he won Richmond this year. Richmond is probably the track that's most like Phoenix. He's He did dominate the first Phoenix or the second Phoenix race in 2016, his very first Phoenix race with Hendrick when he was replacing Dale Earnhardt Jr. Absolutely dominated that race. Led 194 laps. Probably should have led a lot more if Kenseth hadn't gotten into him on one of those late restarts. And he should have won that race if not for the restart shenanigans there at the end. Obviously, he's been mediocre since then, but he's been mediocre at Richmond and won the race. I think he could do it again. He just won Martinsville, which I know I don't use Martinsville a ton in my Phoenix analysis, but as a tiebreaker, sure, I will use Martinsville. And in this case, I think Phoenix is probably a good tiebreaker in this situation as well. They just ran, or Martinsville's a good tiebreaker. Alex Bowman just destroyed it there this past weekend. So I think there's more upside for Bowman than Almarola. So I'd rather have him in tournaments. I do think a lot of people will go towards Almarola just because they know his short flat track results this year. They know he won at New Hampshire. Of course, Bowman won at Richmond, but I just think more people will probably take Almarola at 8,100 rather than Bowman at 8,200 because of that 4-spot starting differential. I'd rather go with Bowman than Almarola here, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close.
Yeah, I don't think either of them are bad plays by any means. But gotta talk about this comment. So Truex run with speed today. If he's not in your lineup, you're doing something wrong. So that's the beauty of DFS, because that's going to be the mindset of a lot of people. And guess what? If Truex doesn't have great long run speed and he just runs 6th all day, there's your chance to be different. If Truex is the highest owned today, which he's probably, I mean, he's going to be up there with Larson.
It's going to be Larson and Truex probably as the top 2 owned. What does my Fantasy Labs model say? The Fantasy Lab projections are up now. Again, that was an issue on their end, not on my end. I do apologize for it, but that was on their end. So yeah, my model says Truex and Larson will be number 1 and 2 in ownership.
That's what my projections say as well. So single entry contest, 3 entry max contest.
Oh, sorry, 1 and 3. I was looking at the perfect percent. 1 and 3. Busher, it says, will be number 2.
So the single entry contest, like, give me a lineup without Truex, because if I can just pivot to, Elliott or Hamlin off of Truex, I'd love to be in that position, because there's no such thing as a guarantee in this race. And when people overreact to the starting position, yes, I think Truex is a great play. But strategy wise, I'm not going to go all in on Truex, even though he's starting 12th, because I know that shit can happen. I know that they can miss it. Look at the first half of the Phoenix race that he won this year. They were not good. Look at the first half of the Martinsville race that they won this year. They were not good. The only reason that they won those races is because they adjusted throughout the race. Now we're going, this is like the highest stakes. If they make just one, if they don't hit it from the beginning and they just make one wrong adjustment, Truex could easily just finish 10th. Like, it wouldn't be that surprising. Or what if we see Truex, John Hunter Nemechek in the truck race, damage on the first lap? What if that happens to Truex? He's going to be back in traffic. There's no guarantee that he gets started clean. So strategy wise, yes, I think Truex is a great play, but when it comes to strategy and DFS, I actually like being underweight on Truex today, especially in the single entry contests. And if he runs into issues and he comes in at 50% owned, you're in a really good position if you build your lineup correctly off of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's just tough because, I mean, I think Truex was clearly the best in the long run of the 4 cars, and I think Larson was clearly the best on the short run of the 4 cars, the championship 4. But what it also means is there's still 35 other cars. And we can't forget guys like Byron or Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick or Ryan Blaney or Brad Keselowski. And we did talk about Logano. Those guys, some of them will factor into this, at least in terms of potential for DFS or betting, if there's head-to-head matchups or group bets, things like that. So it's really interesting. Kyle Busch starts 13th. My model likes him a lot. It likes him as the 5th best driver. He's been super awesome at Phoenix for the most part, except I think the last 2 races or so where he's had problems. But by and large, outside of problems, he's been smash at Phoenix. We know that JGR team seems to be pretty good with long run speed. Could Kyle Busch factor into a winning lineup type scenario? Could Kyle Busch factor into any group bets or anything like that, or Kevin Harvick, who's also been completely dominant at Phoenix up until the past couple years, where he's still been very good at Phoenix, but not just, winning every single race dominant.
I want to like Kyle Busch. I am a Kyle Busch fan. He is so bad in this package. It's not even funny. His most fastest laps in this package is 17, and it was at Darlington, and that's not even close to Phoenix. He's just so bad. Like average finish 16.7 in the 750 horsepower non-road courses this year. So that's why I'm not there on Kyle Busch. I don't see myself.
I think you got to remove the rain crash at New Hampshire from that.
Yeah, that's true as well. But still, you remove that and it's still not great. You know what I mean?
Right, of course.
And he also finished 35th. I think like a good day out of him is going to be about a 7th place, and I'm not sure if that gets there at his salary. But you mentioned Harvick, and we got a question about it. I think that's that's one where Harvick and Logano is a very good conversation, because people like Logano's $400 cheaper. He has a better similar track record, or a better recent track record than Harvick. Harvick's really good at Phoenix. So started, I think 23rd here in the first race, ended up 7th. When you look at the practice data, he's right there with Chase Elliott as far as 5, 10, 15 lap average, and kind of there with Truex. So Truex 27.497 15 lap. Harvick was 27.568. Just for comparison, that's just a little bit slower than Chase Elliott at 27.507. So do I think Harvick can get up there and win this thing? Do I think he can get laps led and fastest laps? I don't see him getting many fastest laps, and that's the issue I have with Harvick. I'd much rather, I think I'd go Logano over it just for that $400 discount. But if that's the final spot in my lineup, I think tournament-wise and trying to pivot a little bit off of Logano, and you have the cap to do it, I think Harvick's a solid play today.
I 100% agree. I was going to say in tournaments, I love pivoting off of Logano and on to Kevin Harvick. I not only that, but there's people will look at starting 10th versus starting 9th and overreact to that just because there's one extra place differential spot. The $400 salary, overreact to that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if we look at practice data, Joey Logano only ran a 5-lap average. It was a 27.066. Harvick was a 27.131. So 0.07 difference over a 5-lap average. But Harvick ran a 10 and a 15 lap. So that tells me he probably liked his car a little better than Logano did. Typically, if you're not running 10 laps averages, that's because you're coming in and tweaking on things. And, so it tells me Harvick was a little more comfortable with his car than Logano. If we look at overall speeds, Harvick was one position ahead of Logano in overall speeds. But the other thing with that is if you look at the total number of laps, Harvick ran 38, Logano ran 37. So extremely comparable there as well. So and it also means Logano made a lot more shorter runs, which will typically lead to faster lap times. So the fact that Logano had a lot more short runs and still fell behind Harvick or whatever in the overall times, one spot behind Harvick on more short runs than Harvick on long runs, tells me Harvick's car is probably better than Logano's. So I love pivoting off of Logano onto Kevin Harvick in tournaments this weekend, especially again at high dollar or single entry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right there with you. Like my cash plays today are Larson, Truex, Logano, like starting there and then building. You did mention the teams that didn't make long runs, and just sorting by overall speed on that speed chart. Bubba Wallace was number 1, Alex Bowman was number 2. Neither of them made long runs. The fastest they did was 5 laps. I will note Denny Hamlin didn't do anything past 10 laps either. And let me see here. And then Logano didn't do 10 laps, but a lot of the guys that were lacking on speed, like you said, they come in, they adjust a lot. Tyler Redick, Austin Dillon, neither of them made anything past a 5-lap run. I did want to talk about Eric Jones because I have no idea. This whole season, I have not known what to do with Eric Jones. When I pick him, he's awful. When I don't pick him, he runs top 10 like he did last week and kills my Blaney bet. But starting 27th, we talked about Austin Dillon in that range. Do you like Eric Jones at all today at 71, a $200 discount from Austin Dillon, or are you is Austin Dillon that much of a better play?
The thing with Eric Jones for me is he's a really track dependent driver. He seems to have certain tracks he thrives on. Texas has been one of those, and he finished 12th at Texas. Bristol, he's always thrived on. He finished 8th at Bristol and 9th at Bristol Dirt. Obviously, super speedways are super speedways. I was a little shocked with that 8th place finish at Martinsville, but he's not been terrible at Martinsville. If we look at Eric Jones' track history at Phoenix, with low downforce at JGR / Furniture Row, which was essentially JGR back in 2017. He finished 8th, 4th, 9th, and 17th. Then he had a high downforce year where he finished 29th and 7th with JGR. And then last year with JGR, another low downforce year, 28th and 22nd. So inconsistency there with Eric Jones at Phoenix. There's been some high points and some low points, but he gets a massive downgrade to Richard Petty Motorsports. He's obviously playable just because he starts in 27th. But I think there's more upside for guys like Austin Dillon right there, $200 above him and starting 4 spots forward of him. I think there's more upside for Chris Buescher, who starts well behind him and is a lot cheaper, or starts 1 spot ahead of him, I should say, but is a lot cheaper in salary. My model, if we look at Eric Jones, it gives him slightly worse average finishing position, slightly less upside in DraftKings than somebody like a Chris Buescher. And Chris Buescher's a lot cheaper than Eric Jones. So my model would heavily favor Buescher over Jones. So my model even favors, in terms of optimal percentage, Austin Dillon over Jones. It only gives Jones a 14% chance of finishing in the optimal lineup, whereas it gives Buescher and Austin Dillon much higher percent chances there. So, and even like Michael Medalla starts right behind him, it gives a higher percent. Ryan Preece starts even further back, gives a higher percent. Eric Jones just isn't in a great spot here with all these other guys starting in his vicinity, in his price range, within maybe $1,000 or $1,500 above or below. Let's say a few $100 above and $1,000 or $1,500 below. He's just not as much of a viable play for me this week. And I'd even rather have somebody like a Chase Briscoe, as we've been talking about, as a tournament play, because I think Eric Jones can go over owned because he's starting 5 spots further back. And so I'd rather just have like a Chase Briscoe than an Eric Jones.
Mm-hmm. As far as, and I know I'm skipping around here, but I do that a lot. Surprise dominator. I don't think, we got Larson starting first, Chase Elliott second, Byron third. I don't see Byron getting up there and dominating. I think he's going to ride around all day. He's going to be a good teammate, as he said in his interview yesterday. Ryan Blaney, who's been fast off the truck, who if he would have not ran into that bad luck last round, he made the Final Four. If Austin Dillon wouldn't have put him in the wall at Kansas or Texas or wherever, Ryan Blaney, I think, can make some noise today. Starting 4th, $9,500. What do you think about Blaney? Because he's ran 3rd here a couple times, led 35 laps here earlier this year, won the first stage. 2019, he started on the pole. He led 94 laps. Do you think Blaney's going to get out there and run around, or do you think there's enough speed there that he could end up leading this thing for a little bit while the Championship 4 kind of figure things out?
I don't think it's going to be on the short run with Larson on the pole and dominating everybody in the short run speed. If it does happen, it would have to come from a longer run for Ryan Blaney. There's not going to be a competition caution this time because we had the practice and everything. So no early guaranteed caution to shake things up. Remember that. But what we do see is Blaney was right there neck and neck with Larson on short run speed, 26.818 versus 26.860. So 0.05 slower. He was a little faster in the 10 lap than Larson and faster in the 15 lap and even made a 20 lap run. So he likes his car, knowing that he made a 20 lap run. He had the fastest 10 lap, fastest 20 lap. I could see him overtaking Larson. He's also got the benefit of starting on that outside, which we've seen in the Xfinity and Truck Series has been the faster way to get going So he could end up second right at the start there. And if he's got a better long run car than Kyle Larson, absolutely, Ryan Blaney could be a surprise dominator. I think it's going to be pretty hard for anybody else to be a surprise dominator outside of things getting shaken up a little bit with strategy or whatever, and that's where I'd put a Harvick or a Logano as a surprise dominator. I don't think it's going to be a Byron. He's going to play wingman to his guys. He's not going to go past Larson. He's not going to go past Chase Elliott. He's definitely not going to go past both of them, for any of that reason. I don't see, Kyle Busch for any reason or Christopher Bell as teammates. I could see maybe a Keselowski shaking things up as well, but I do think Blaney's probably the most likely surprise dominator, which also makes him a very good tournament play. And I really like him in the big tournaments because I think he's gonna be lower owned than Logano, probably lower owned than a Harvick and a Keselowski, things like that. So where I really like Blaney is actually just all over in tournaments. But if you really want to take down the big GPP, I think Blaney's a great contrarian dominator there.
Mm.
You don't have to get too crazy in the high dollar ones, right? It's like you don't have to go Blaney because everything's gonna be so chalky. Even if you just go different from like Logano to Harvick or something and that works out, or even if you just go a little different with your place differential plays like a Chase Briscoe, as I was talking about, you don't have to be that contrarian with your dominators. But in the massive GPP is where I love Ryan Blaney. So, you always have to think about your tournament structure, the size, the likelihood of it being chalky. High dollar tends to be a lot more chalky than low dollar. Single entry tends to be a little more chalky than multi-entry. So freaking love Ryan Blaney in the massive GPP. Don't like him as much in high dollar. Still good play there, because he's going to be super low owned. But you don't have to play Blaney there. Where you could go contrarian would be somebody like a Chase Briscoe, like I'm saying, which is a little safer.
Mm-hmm. Let me see here. Right there with you. It'd be music to my ears if they fired Rick Allen after this race.
18 cars wrecking everywhere. Will they throw the caution? Like, are you kidding me?
I need to make a compilation of all the stupid stuff he says, but it'd be a 14-day YouTube video.
Yesterday, Daniel Hellmick takes his helmet off and the helmet's still on. Like, what? Even like basic observations he can't get correctly. Hellmick takes his helmet off. No, the helmet's still on, you dumbass. He took his Hans device off.
Yeah. Another thing he said that I noticed with Hemrick and his backflip, I tweeted it. He said, oh, come on. Oh, he said, and I quote, when Daniel Hemrick wins races, he does a backflip. When does he win races? When has he won a race in the last 15 years?
I know.
Or however long. Like, just like, I forget who tweeted it today, but they're like, oh, it's great to see the backflip back after, Edwards. And I'm like, what? So we can see it once every 200 races? Like, I'm still salty about that. Good for Hemrick, but God, that was irritating. Here's a question.
And I do see a question there. Yeah, I think Byron's total fade this week. That's my answer. Quick and easy answer.
Here we go. Briscoe, McDowell, or Pasta Man and Busher. I think this is a very good discussion, actually. But I don't think there's a huge edge either way. I like McDowell hasn't been great. Pasta hasn't been great, but he starts a few spots further back. So I think you're looking at Briscoe versus Busher in that rate. Like, I don't see McDowell or Alfredo being huge differences in points. So I think you're going at this point, it's Briscoe versus Busher. And I like the Briscoe play better in tournaments, but safer play is definitely Busher. Starting 26th, he's pretty good at short flat tracks. Pulling up his record here at Phoenix, top between 16th and 20th in the last 6 races here. So
my model has it a clear Briscoe McDowell.
Okay.
It just thinks Pasta Man has very little upside here. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Martinsville's kind of a unique circumstance for Anthony Alfredo. Outside of unique circumstances, he's mostly been a non-factor. I mean, his best finishes were obviously Talladega, Circuit of the Americas. Nashville was an interesting one, but again, kind of a unique situation there with a brand new track for the Cup Series. Talladega and Martinsville are only top 20s. If we look at the short flats, otherwise this year, DNF'd Phoenix, 31st at Richmond, 32nd at New Hampshire, 26th at Richmond. So just not very good. A best finish of 26 at the comparable tracks. You know, I would much rather have McDowell and Briscoe in this situation. I'm looking at Michael McDowell's stats here. I keep forgetting I have to look all the way up there at McDowell because he made the playoffs, which I think is ridiculous. I really want them to do away with. I mean, McDowell's been pretty terrible at these tracks too. He has not been good at these tracks either, but Phoenix was his best finish. He did finish 23rd. But, you know, I've got McDowell finishing a couple spots better than his teammate, and he starts a couple spots better. So that's going to net him a couple more points. And so you're right. It does kind of come down to Briscoe versus Buescher, which is close. But there's more upside for McDowell than there is for Anthony Alfredo, in my opinion. So I'm going to go with Briscoe and McDowell. But, man, I really wish NASCAR would revise the playoff format so there was only 12 drivers that got in, because Michael McDowell didn't deserve to be in the playoffs. Eric Almarola, as much as I love him, didn't deserve to be in the playoffs. You know, and there's probably a couple other drivers like, I mean, Tyler Redick probably, you know, he got in on points, but there was absolutely no chance for him to do anything. And those three drivers that I just named all got eliminated in the first round anyway. And then probably between Bell and Kurt Busch, one of those two probably shouldn't have been in anyway either. They only had one win, and they were the probably two lowest on points in the regular season there. So, like, a 12-driver playoff would have been great. And I hope NASCAR returns to a 12-driver playoff someday, because no driver outside of the top 12 at the end of the regular season has made the Final Four. So what's the point? We're hoping for a Michael McDowell miracle run to Phoenix? Come on.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here, and I think it kind of helps get out of the first round without a Kyle Larson running out on the first round.
Well, that's why I say make it 12 drivers and make the first round 5 races long.
Okay, yeah. I thought you were like going to say same.
Well, because if you have 12 drivers, you can make it 5 races long for the first round and cut it to 8, and then
I like that a lot.
And then you can make it 8 down to 4 and have a 4-race second round, and then you can have a championship race.
Okay. Yeah, I'm on board there. And we talked about this on Stacking Denny's. Shout out to DraftKings for stupidly sizing contests today. The $400 contest is almost full. We're like 3.5 hours till lock. Plus the payout structure. So like, the $44 almost full. I'm irritated. It's the final race of the season. Like, come on. Demand's been high all season long. Anyway. Yes, we did talk about punts. We are on board with punts today. Probably, you know, the Quinn Houff, Garrett Smithley, Joey Gase, maybe depending on your salary restrictions. But I don't hate punting this week at all. Just because of how Truex starts 12th, and I'm all on board with punting. I can guarantee I'm going to have at least one high dollar lineup with a punt in it.
Yep. Like I said, we think it's totally fine. As far as our punt ranks go below BJ McLeod, I think we both had Quinn Houff 1 and Garrett Smithley 2. I will add, if somehow Timmy Hill races the full race, I would have him up there probably in that range as well. But there's very questionable whether he will. The reason I say below BJ McLeod range is because my model clearly has BJ McLeod ahead of, you know, kind of everybody else except Smithley. But just based off of speed, it's not even going to be close. I mean, McLeod's going to be several laps ahead of these guys. So if he starts ahead of them and finishes ahead of them, he's probably going to get more DraftKings points. So I would easily take BJ McLeod. I see a question there. BJ McLeod over David Starr, for example.
I would take a bag of shit over David Starr, to be honest with you.
David Starr is probably going to crash Kyle Larson or something,
5 laps in the race, David Starr is going to bring out the caution, and I don't know, whatever worst case scenario is possible.
What's going to happen is it's going to be Hamlin in the lead, Truex or Larson second and third, whatever order you want, Chase Elliott fourth, and Alex Bowman eighth. And Hamlin's going to spin out on the final lap, take out second and third, which is Truex and Larson. And that means Elliott's going to win because Hamlin screwed it up, and Bowman's going to finish fifth. And you're not going to be allowed to talk shit about Denny Hamlin throwing it away, and Chase Elliott, wins the championship, which is the one you don't want.
Yeah. So to catch everybody up, I made a bet with Doc earlier this week. I said, if Alex Bowman finishes top 5 today, I can never talk shit about Denny Hamlin again. And I
get a free roll here. I don't lose anything.
Yeah. He's not risking anything. But then my futures bets are, I'm covered very well. I'm going to do really well if Truex takes it. I'm going to do good if Larson takes it. I'm going to do good if Hamlin takes it. Elliott's kind of where I'm a little over or underexposed, whatever the term is there. But so yeah, that'd be the worst case scenario, is Elliott winning it and Bowman finishing top 5. I just thought of, so you mentioned BJ Mcleod. He starts 32nd, $5,200. If you're in that price range and you're debating Alfredo or McLeod, would you go McLeod?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd go McLeod. Not because he's going to be faster than Alfredo, but he just has a couple more spots he could gain, because I don't see Alfredo making many passes. Whereas, I could see BJ McLeod getting up to 31st, for example, and gaining one spot and finishing one spot further behind, but that one extra place differential will make that up, and he's cheaper. So I'd rather have BJ McLeod. And BJ McLeod is going to be significantly lower owned than Alfredo. So yeah,
Alfredo walls it on lap 1 and finishes dead last. That's a solid pivot. We've been here about an hour, so just a little late. Welcome though.
Yeah. 1 hour going on. So we've mostly talked DFS, and you were just mentioning you're kind of covered in your futures for the championship. Let's talk some bets, because there's a lot going on in the betting side of things this weekend. So I'm covered on Truex, but I also hit Truex at 10-1 to win, because I couldn't resist that. And he's actually 20-1 to win at the Westgate if you are in Nevada. Hamlin is 16-1 to win at Westgate if you're in Nevada. But that's kind of wild to me that those guys are that high. But as far as betting goes, I think we're not really betting a ton of outrights outside of a couple unique situations. I bet that Truex 10-1, and I've got Logano 42-1. I was talking about betting Harvick 34-35-1 earlier in the week. I ended up just sticking with my Harvick minus 140 top 10. I think there are some live betting opportunities here, obviously. But that's all I'm kind of on with outrights this week, especially because you're covered so well. The only way I would say you would make an outright bet outside of, I know you hit Logano 40-1 because that's stupid, would be if you can find Chase Elliott in a live bet situation 8-1 or something, right?
Yeah. I have no interest, like just betting in general. I don't have a ton of interest today, and I mentioned this in my article. Like, I like Harvick minus 150 for a top 10, minus 140. Hit that earlier this week. I also saw Logano's minus 150 for a top 10 at BetMGM. I don't particularly like BetMGM, so I'm probably not going to bet it. I hate the app. I hate all of their processes. I'm a big MGM guy, casino-wise, but I hate their app.
Yep.
And that's just a personal grudge. But those are the two bets I'd probably make, and that's probably it. I like Almarola plus 240 for a top 10, a little sprinkle there, but other than that, I'm just not finding a ton. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy the race and call it a season. It's to that point where I'm ready for it to be done. I hate how these races play out, the championship race, because people don't try and stuff like that. And then it's just irritating to lose a bet on that. I am a little hesitant to hit the Harvick top 10, the Logano top 10 bets hard, like I did Blaney last week. But at the same time, like, I think they're very close to locks. And so that's my only hesitancy, is just losing that one last week. This is a good question on. So DraftKings this week did the dual forecast bets, and I've had so many people ask me what the hell these are. They didn't explain what they are, and everyone basically landed that they are finishing 1-2 no matter the order. When they opened, everything was 16-1 or longer, which if you just bet every single championship 16-1 or longer, you'd guarantee profit if they end up 1-2. Now they got Larson Elliott at 8-1, Larson Hamlin 15-1, but still there's opportunity there to make some money if this race goes as we expect, where it's going to be championship drivers 1-2. Larson Harvick 45-1. I it's worth a sprinkle. Like, I'm not confident in it. I don't think Harvick's going to overrun top 2, but
yeah, I had my eye on earlier on, and I don't think it's the case now, but where is I'm Googling, or not Googling, I'm doing a control F. Hamlin Harvick 55-1. Kind of was eyeing that one, or I would guess Truex Harvick would be even longer than that. I don't see it here. Oh, that's because I was doing Hamlin. Truex Harvick is, if I can type Truex correctly, Truex Harvick 65-1. I don't hate that one at all. Or Truex Logano as well. So, yeah, I mean, there's opportunity here for sure. So Truex Logano's 35. I'd rather have Truex Harvick at 65, but I kind of like that one. I think there's some opportunity to bet these Byron ones with a Hendrick car 1-2, so either Elliott Byron or Larson Byron, because I still think, if they're good, Elliott, Byron, and Larson are all really good in the same way. So I could see Byron, somehow sneaking in and playing second fiddle to one of these other guys, and the third guy having an issue. So I wouldn't mind, a Larson Byron or an Elliott Byron 1-2, knowing that, it's probably going to be the one being Larson or Elliott, and Byron being second there. So you're only getting kind of half of those bets still, but I do think if the odds are long enough on those, that I don't mind those plays. So I see 22-1 Elliott Byron, and I see 20-1 Larson Byron. I don't hate those. I mean, if you think Larson wins, and his outright odds for Larson are essentially 2-1, let's say on DraftKings. So he wins 33% of the time, according to them, ballpark. Then of that 33%, if you're getting 20-1 odds on the Larson Byron combination, and that only has to happen 5% of the time for it to be profitable, and 33% of the time Larson's winning, then is that 28% gap? Do you think, Larson or Byron fills that in? Yeah, I sure do. So I don't hate correlating either an Elliott Byron or a Larson Byron 1-2 pairing either.
And as much as I hate to say it, Bowman too. So you can go Larson Bowman 80-1, Elliott Bowman 90-1. I don't particularly hate that. I mean, I think the Hendrick cars are going to do what they've done all season, and there's a chance that they could run all top 5 today. I don't think it's as like we talked about. I don't think this is as big of a gap as people think it is, and especially sports books. Like, Joe Gibbs Racing is going to be a factor today.
Yep.
Denny Hamlin could win this championship. Martin Truex Jr. could win this championship. Nothing's guaranteed. Like, I think it's going to be a very, very, very good race, and go Martin Truex Jr. as far as I'm concerned.
Truex Bowman 110-1.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen, but didn't they finish 1-2 at Richmond? Or was it Bowman Logano? I'm looking over here. It was Bowman Hamlin. Oh yeah, because it was like Hamlin, Truex, and Logano were all right up there all day. And yeah, Logano finished 3rd, Truex finished 5th. And Christopher Bell snuck in there 4th, but yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at what are the longest Truex ones. It's Truex Bowman's 110, because I know Truex is the longest of the 4, even though I don't necessarily think he should be based off long run speed. This is such a crazy race. This is if it comes down to short run, it's basically Larson versus Elliott. And I clearly have to give the nod to Larson.
Mm-hmm.
But if it comes down to long run speed, I don't know. And I almost might give the edge to Truex over Hamlin just based off practice times, but Hamlin a little more edge and consistency over Truex. So this is honestly, any of these four can win the championship, and it's going to be really, really interesting.
And plus Hamlin's, typical. I'm just banking on him pissing down his leg today. So what was I going to say?
So somebody asked, maybe while you try to get your train of thought here, somebody asked, does Hamlin get a speeding penalty on pit road today? The real question is, does Larson get a speeding penalty on pit road today? Larson had two at Phoenix earlier this year.
He had 3 at Martinsville.
2 or 3 at Martinsville this past weekend. Larson's had more speeding penalties than Denny Hamlin this year. We all know Denny Hamlin for his speeding penalties, but last year and the year before, I think it was, Hamlin corrected those issues, especially last year. He didn't have many at all, but they've crept back a little bit this year. But Larson, by far, has been worse at speeding in recent times than Denny Hamlin. That's just something to keep in the back of the mind as well.
Yeah. So the question I was going to ask, and I was thinking about before, how much of the car builds are you taking into account? Chase Elliott has a brand new car. Kyle Larson has the same car from the earlier Phoenix, and I think it's the same for Truex and Hamlin. They all brought older cars. No, Larson has the oldest car in the Hendrick fleet. I thought that was an interesting move. Now, obviously, these cars don't change a ton. Like they're not. It's not like it's going to be slow. But to bring the oldest car, like, you either have to think it has some kind of edge, or you're just that confident. Like, and speaking of confident, Larson going out and laying that lap down in qualifying was a big dick move. Like, he, like, as in, like, confident as shit and making a statement. But 2, when they failed twice in inspection and then didn't even bring the car back to the garage and just went right back through with making a tiny adjustment, like, I think that just speaks to how confident that team is. Like, you're playing with fire there, because if you fail that third time, you have to do a pass through to start the race. You start in the back, you can't qualify. Like, that blew my mind when they did that. Like, they had to know what the specific issue was to do that. But any concern over, Larson having an older car, Chase Elliott having a brand new car, and then, Truex, the story with Truex is it's the same car that he won with here in the spring.
Yeah, I'm not worried about any of that, new or old or whatever. Each team is bringing what they think will be the best for them. And so they're all trying to bring their best. Nobody's sandbagging now. Nobody's tinkering for next year. They're all bringing what they think is the best material they have. The only thing I might say is the fact that Elliott's bringing a new car means maybe they think they found something, or it means they think earlier this year was the car they had earlier this year wasn't good enough, but they still finished 5th in Phoenix earlier this year. But if they found something, why wouldn't they put that on Larson's as well? So I don't really think it means anything. I think they're all just bringing, what they think is the best for them. So I'm not reading too much into any of that stuff.
Yeah, and like that was the narrative last year as well, because Keselowski brought, his dominant short flat track car of the season and didn't win it. Wasn't. I mean, I think Keselowski could have won it, but obviously Chase, came through the field and dominated it. But anybody we miss? Any other questions? Any other bets that you like?
I like Logano plus 105 versus Kez at MGM. I think he's 4 for 4 on these track types versus his teammate this year. So definitely like that bet. But no, except for New Hampshire, but that's the one where Logano was 2 laps down and finished fourth. And Kez finished 3rd, and Logano was way faster. He just didn't have enough time to catch Kez. But so he's 3 for 4. But I like Logano plus 105 versus Kez. I made a group bet, but I don't think it's relevant outside of Nevada. So
Is that the one with Almarola?
Yeah.
I bet that too. I forget where I bet it though.
So you found it somewhere then. But
yeah, I think it was like Bet Rivers or something.
Gotcha. So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna keep looking at bets. I think there's some opportunities. There'll probably be some prop opportunities. I'm gonna keep looking at head-to-heads. More bets open as we get closer and closer to race time in various places. So I'll keep looking, keep my eyes out. But I tweeted my card out earlier this morning. I've got that Truex 850 future. I also bet him 10-1 to win, because if I think he's going to win the championship at 850, I may as well bet him 10-1 to win. Get a little correlation there. I've got that quarter unit bet on Logano. I've got Logano over Kez, Harvick top 10, and the Almarola group bet. So that's my card right now. Definitely will probably add one or two more bets as the show ends and the race approaches. I just don't know what those bets will be at this point in time. As far as my model goes, so I'm looking at straight up just finishing position upside. It's got Larson 1, Elliott 2, Truex and Hamlin tied 3rd, Logano 5th, Kyle Busch 6th, Keselowski 7th, Byron 8th, Harvick 9th, Blaney 10th. But I think that's the top 10 we all expect. You could quibble with the order. That's upside. And in terms of average finish, it's got Hamlin 1, Elliott 2, Truex 3, Larson 4, which is funny because it's got Larson the most upside, but the worst median. And I think that's fair. Well, Larson has a wider range of outcomes, I think, than most drivers, especially knowing this hasn't been his best track type, but he was smashed in practice. Kyle Busch 5, Logano 6, Byron 7, Blaney 8, Keselowski 9, Harvick 10 in average finish.
When you did your first one, mine is the exact same, except Larson and Elliott are flipped, but they're like super close. And Harvick and Kyle Busch in 6th and 9th are flipped. I have Harvick 6th, Kyle Busch 9th, but same exact 10 drivers.
You know what happens when you flip 6 and 9, right? You still get 6 and 9.
Accurate. Christopher Bell, though, I think that's one guy we didn't talk about. DFS wise, starts 8th, $8,700. Is he a pivot off of Logano?
Sorry, say that again.
Christopher Bell.
Christopher Bell, is he a pivot off of Logano? Yes, I think so. I don't think he's a terrible play. The only issue with Bell versus Harvick for me is the teammate situation, right? He's not going to be racing Hamlin and Truex hard, whereas Harvick or Logano would race them hard. So I'd rather pivot to Harvick off of Logano than Bell off of Logano. Plus, there's 2 less place differential places for Logano versus Bell and 1 less for Harvick versus Bell. So I would much rather pivot to Harvick off of Logano than Bell, just because of the teammate situation, the little bit less place differential potential as well, and mostly just the teammate situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bell has been very, very good on short flat tracks this year. He has 3 top 5s in the 4 races, and then a 9th in the first Phoenix race. But it's hard to imagine him even risking, racing hard. And that's the most frustrating thing about this race is we don't know which guys are going to just absolutely not care both ways. Like we talked about it on Stacking Denny's this week. Like Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick are going to be those guys that don't care if they mess up the championship race. William Byron, on the other hand, is going to be the guy that doesn't care to actually race because he doesn't want to screw anything up. I think Christopher Bell is going to fit in that same category. Christopher Bell is not going to push anything. If a playoff driver's behind him, he's going to let him just go on by. Maybe, if it's a Hendrick guy, he'll slow him up a little bit. But we saw that yesterday with Nemechek and Hemrick. They raced each other incredibly cleanly. Now, Nemechek had something to race for. He was in the Owners' Championship, whereas Hemrick was not. So he actually had something to race Hemrick hard for. And even then, they both raced each other incredibly cleanly. They gave each other plenty of room, especially late there at the end. That's what we're going to see from a Christopher Bell. He's not going to press the issue with Martin Truex Jr. and Denny Hamlin if they're in the lead late. We go back and watch any of those championship races. The teammates that are out of the playoffs, not once in any of those did I see any contact between teammates, any getting close to contact between teammates. It's just one of those situations where the bigger picture is going to kick in.
You know, I shouldn't say between teammate, but you know, between a teammate that's out and a teammate that's in, I could obviously see, you know, there's if Elliott and Larson are 1 and 2 right at the end, I certainly would expect a Henrik Cindric type finish, you know. But in terms of a teammate out versus a teammate in, Bella's just going to play wingman. Kyle Busch is going to play wingman. Byron's going to play wingman. Bowman, wingman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They have no interest in messing anything up or potentially doing it. Did you see Hamlin, Bowman, Elliott, Harvick are next to each other in pits? That's funny.
Oh boy. Yeah, they'll make it hard on each other that way.
They absolutely will. Harvick definitely will. Bowman, I would be surprised if he didn't. You know, I mean, all you have to do is just kind of get into your pit a little bit wrong and just be out. Like
either slide a little far or stop a little short. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wouldn't that be something? I wonder if NBC will pick up on that. I didn't realize that. That's funny though. I'm looking at the pit stalls now. Well, so Elliott, not really. He has a gap in front of him between him and Harvick. So
that's
Harvick's in pit stall 9, Elliott's in 10, but there's a gap. Bowman, where are they at? Oh, same thing with Hamlin and Bowman. I mean, if they're both leaving at the same time, or okay, let me think here. So let's say Hamlin's leading. They come in and pit. Bowman's running 15th. Is he further enough? He's not far enough back that Hamlin's going to get his stop done when Bowman's coming in.
Yeah,
so,
not quite.
Yeah, I wish that was an issue, but I don't think that's going to be an issue with the gaps in front of them. All of them, you know, Truex has a gap in front of him. Hamlin has a gap in front of him. Elliott does, and then Larson has the very first pit stall. So, yeah, I don't think that's good. As much as I'd love to see it, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think there's going to be too much of an issue there. It would be a whole lot better if there weren't those gaps, but because of the gaps, I don't see much issue there.
Yeah, and the only other scenario would be like, you know, Chase Elliott comes in, does a 4-tire stop, Harvick does a 2-tire stop, and then Harvick comes out in front of Elliott and, you know, maybe
cuts him off or whatever.
Yeah, cuts him off or fucking roughs him up a little bit. That would be funny.
That would be funny. But yeah, I mean, will Bowman or Harvick factor in at all in terms of their rivalries? Not even just in the pits, but on track. Is there any chance that happens?
I don't think Harvick will. I mean, Harvick doesn't care, but you know, as much as NASCAR shut it down, that still irritates me that they shut it down like they did.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think it's going to come into play. And even Bowman, like Bowman's kind of just Bowman ain't going to do anything.
No, I agree. Completely agree. I mean, the only way anything would happen is if, you know, Hamlin and Bowman were like 1-2 late. I could still see Bowman trying to press Hamlin and you know, get the win or you know, try to help one of his teammates out there, something like that. But I mean, that's more of just a situational. You know, I'd see him doing that if it was Truex in front of him too. It's not specifically a Hamlin thing, you know. And I guess Harvick, it wouldn't matter. Whoever of the 4 is in front of him, if he's second late on, Harvick's going to try to win. So again, it's not going to be specifically an Elliott thing. Maybe there's a little extra because it's Elliott, but you know, I don't really see either of these rivalries coming into play in this race at all, especially knowing there's these gaps in the pit box. I think if there weren't the gaps, you could definitely see a little gamesmanship with stopping a little short or pulling in a little long just to make it a little tighter. I mean, because that, in the end, that also just helps your teammates out, which is a smart thing to do as a team strategy. But I don't really see anything coming of any of that. Yeah, I think we're pretty good here. My favorite GPP plays, again, in higher dollar, I really like Chase Briscoe, or in single entry. They're still great in massive GPP as well. And in massive GPP, I really like Ryan Blaney. So we talked about Blaney starting on the outside of the second row and had better long run speed than the Hendrick cars. So if he gets to that second or third spot on the start there, and there's no competition caution because we had practice this week, I could see Blaney leading the middle of that first portion. What's do we have stage bets here? What's Blaney's stage 1 bet? I'm looking to see if we have any stage bets.
I'm not seeing it anywhere.
Yeah, I don't see any stage bets anywhere, which is
even on Bet
unfortunate.
Rivers.
Because I could see, a stage bet on Blaney being pretty productive there, given the situation. But yeah, I mean, a contrarian GPP play with Blaney and the massive GPP, I think, is pretty smart.
Yeah. So let's say big GPP today, you have one entry. What type of build are you doing with that one entry? Are you going 3 Dom? You going 2 Dom? What you doing?
I'm fading Larson. I'm gonna go Truex and Blaney. So I'm just constructing this off the top of my head. I'm just going Truex and Blaney for now, just to throw them in there. I might go a third dominator. I don't know. We'll see. I think I'm gonna be a little more chalky in the back guys because I'm throwing Ryan Blaney in there. So I'm gonna throw in a Chris Buescher and either a Priest or McDowell. We'll see where we go there. Who else do I like? Let's try Almarola starting 18th, and then I have average of 7,800, so I can play a higher guy and a lower guy. So I'm just tinkering real quick. I could either go Elliott Hamlin. Like I said, I'm a fade Larson. Let's say I go Hamlin. That's 4,600 left. I'd have to go super shit box. Let's say I go Elliott. That's 4,800 left. I could play Quinn Houff. I don't like that either. What if I went with Logano or Harvick? This is pretty contrarian, but I could see this working out. So if I go Logano, there's 6,700 left. If I go Harvick, there is 6,300 left. I could still throw in a Chase Briscoe, but maybe because that would fill up most of the salary, I'd rather pivot down to a Priest or McDowell. Let me look at Priest and McDowell's stats this year at these tracks. 23rd, so McDowell won the first Phoenix. At Richmond, McDowell won. At New Hampshire, 25 versus 22, Priest won that one. And at Richmond 2, McDowell was 28th and Priest was 25th. So Priest won that one. I'll go with Priest. So a little extra safety there as well. And so that leaves $500 on the table. So it's Truex, Blaney, Harvick, Buescher, Almarola, Ryan, Priest as a super contrarian, not super, but contrarian enough. You're not playing Larson or Elliott, which I think do both have short run speed. But I'm basing this off of the storyline, the idea that Ryan Blaney takes an early lead, which means he would take it from both Larson and Elliott. So that allows the place differential potential of Truex to catch up. Harvick's amazing here. He doesn't give a crap. Neither does Logano. So, one of those two, I'm just going to say Harvick for whatever reason. Almarola is great at these tracks, and he starts 18th, and Priest will just have more place differential potential than McDowell, and they've kind of averaged the same finishes this year at these tracks. So Priest over McDowell. So that's kind of my build in a massive GPP.
Mm-hmm.
Just for a single lineup. Now, obviously, if I was doing 150 lineups, there'd be a lot of different builds.
Right. I was just, tinkering with it as you were talking. As much as I don't like Kyle Busch, you could possibly fit him in a lineup like that. Down in the 6,000. So one guy that's had decent speed this weekend is Corey LaJoy. Buescher down there is going to be chalk. Priest is going to be chalk. Does Corey LaJoy start too high at 24th to be a pivot, or is he actually a solid pivot in that range because people are going to stay away from him? He finished 21st at Richmond this year, 27th in the first Phoenix race, but I remember he stayed out or did some kind of weird strategy. He had like 12 laps led, so he stayed out for something, and that kind of screwed him. But 23.9 average running position in that race, 23.8 at Loudon, 21.6 at Richmond. Is Corey LaJoy, if a good pivot there, if Buescher has issues, if Priest has issues, if McDowell has issues?
Yeah, he's not bad. He doesn't have amazing speed. He has decent speed, but not amazing. I mean, his 5 lap average was 27.5, which isn't very good. I'm scrolling through everybody on the 5 lap board in overall speed board also was better than him in 5-lap, and a few guys behind him, like Chase Briscoe, was faster in 5-lap. Justin Haley was faster in 5-lap. Kurt Busch was faster. Chris Buescher, Michael McDowell, Brad Keselowski, Ross Chastain, Ryan Newman, Daniel Suarez. In the 10-lap board, he improves, which is good. I like that, but still not amazing. So, yes, he's definitely playable in these, and he has some speed. I just would rather have guys on these bigger teams, that have shown speed. Like, obviously, we know Stewart-Haas Racing's shown speed, so I'd rather have a Briscoe than a LaJoie. And if we compare even like 10-lap speed, Briscoe didn't make a 10-lap, but LaJoie was 27.6. You'd expect Briscoe to be probably in that range, since he was also right around that Corey LaJoie range in terms of 5-lap speed. So, yeah, I could see LaJoie. I think I'd just rather have a Briscoe, but I also guess you can make the argument if you'd rather have a Briscoe, then why not just go with LaJoie? Because he'll be even lower owned probably in the big GPP. So, and like I said, I do like Briscoe for high dollar. So maybe I'd rather go with Corey LaJoie in low dollar, or not low dollar. Yeah, but like the big GPP. So I think if I were to play Corey LaJoie and I went chalkier on the dominators, LaJoie would be a better, place differential play than Briscoe in terms of a contrarian one. So, kind of thinking through all that, this is a good thought. These are good thought exercises to do. I think I'd rather have Corey LaJoie in a massive GPP and Briscoe in a high dollar GPP.
Yeah. I just look at it as getting off the Priest chalk, the McDowell chalk, because I'm not sold on Priest or McDowell today.
Priest, McDowell, and Buescher, like we said, Priest, McDowell, and Buescher will be the chalk down there. So Briscoe and LaJoie are the pivots.
Right. And definitely don't play Cole Custer starting 7th.
No.
Please don't do that. Good question here. Bubba Wallace, starting 25th. I hate the price. I can't fit him in. $7,700 on DraftKings. I think Bubba can run top 15, but that's about it. So $7,700, like I'd rather go Austin Dillon or go lower and afford a better driver up top as opposed to trying to fit in Bubba Wallace. Because I think if you're going with Bubba today, you're absolutely like purposely slamming him into the line.
I'm going to disagree with you on Austin Dillon versus Bubba there. I'd rather go Bubba Wallace because everybody's going to go Austin Dillon. Bubba Wallace had a half a second a lap faster 5-lap average than Austin Dillon. And that's massive. Neither of them made 10-lap runs, so that's all we have to go by. But Bubba Wallace absolutely smashed Austin Dillon on 5-lap average. And it's not like it's that much more expensive. It's $400, and he starts further back than Austin Dillon. So faster speeds, probably lower owned, and starts further back. I would rather have Bubba Wallace than Austin Dillon in this situation. We know those Toyotas, and he's a Toyota, has great long run speed. So I expect that long run speed to carry over if you went to 10 and 15 lap averages, whereas I don't expect that as much for Austin Dillon. He already was starting half a second slower on 5-lap average. So, I kind of like Bubba Wallace this weekend as a contrarian play off of Austin Dillon. Now, what does my model say? My model says Austin Dillon's going to be higher owned than Bubba Wallace. And my model says Austin Dillon has a higher percent chance of being in the optimal lineup than Bubba Wallace. But I still think and my model's getting them kind of close, like 25% to 20% in ownership. But I think it's going to be more like closer to 30% versus 15%. And if that's going to be the case, I think my model might be a little under on Austin Dillon, might be a little over on Bubba Wallace, something like that. I would rather have Bubba Wallace than Austin Dillon.
Mm-hmm. And I've just been tinkering with this a little bit. So you can actually do a Truex Elliott Logano build with Bubba Wallace. It's really not that difficult.
Yeah, and then you got 6,100 left over for 2 drivers. That's very doable. You could do one of those Priest or McDowell types.
Yeah.
And then you have 6,400 left over. Either one of those you could do Buescher. So, yep, that's not hard to do at all. And then there's other options, where you throw a punt down there and you do something like a Jones or a Dillon as well. You can have a Bubba and a Dillon lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So there are options there. Yep. I'd rather have Bubba Wallace than Austin Dillon in the massive GPP because of the ownership difference. And I think Bubba Wallace will be actually potentially faster than Austin Dillon this weekend. Potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't want to overreact to practice, but it is a data point, and it does show he was half a second a lap faster than Austin Dillon in 5-lap average. It's not nothing.
And he ran in the first race here this year. I think he ran like 13th or something, if I remember right. I know he put he was 16th, also started 25th. You could argue that the 23 team is better now than they were then. He put Cole Custer into the wall. That's what killed my day. By the way, so Phoenix owes me money. Same condition or same exact thing as Bristol earlier this year. Like I was so bummed that the King of the Speedway was at Bristol because I had such bad luck at Bristol, and it continued this week or this year with King of the Speedway at the end. But Phoenix, I am not good at. Like one of my trips to Vegas was specifically on the Phoenix weekend. You and I watched the race together.
Yeah, we watched it together.
And I did that because I didn't want to play DFS because I knew I'd lose. Like that's how bad I am at Phoenix. It's not like I just can't figure this damn thing out, and I have no idea why. That's why I'm not playing much DFS today. I'm gonna put a couple entries in the $400 just to maybe get some luck there. But it's
Phoenix is a really predictable track, and I've had success at it, but you still need to make your pivots. You still need to make your things. And what I was going to say is a lot of Phoenix comes down to nailing the dominators. And if we're talking the big four here, the championship four, of those four, which is going to be the lowest owned? Because I have my thoughts, but I'm curious your thoughts.
I think it's gonna be Hamlin.
I think it's gonna be Elliott.
It's those are my two. I think it's gonna be Hamlin, though.
It's definitely gonna be one of those two. I just think that 4-spot differential for Hamlin might help a little bit with people knowing Larson's gonna be on the pole.
So this brings up a point that you always make in the big GPP or in high dollar, because I think it's gonna flip. Because big GPP Elliott gets a boost just because of his name.
I agree with that.
We see it every week. Like there hasn't been a race that he's been under like 23% owned this year. No matter where he starts. So that's why I think high dollar.
Elliott has the lowest expectation for me in terms of what I expect him to do, just because if you compare him to Larson, he's worse off. And then, the JGR cars are probably faster in the long run. So I like getting Elliott maybe more in there in certain ways. Just if things go wrong, if things go crazy, whatever. Elliott obviously will probably be one of the top 4 or 5 cars. So like I said, I like Ryan Blaney at low dollar. I kind of like Chase Elliott in higher dollar because you're going to get so much chalk on Larson. You're going to get so much chalk on Truex. So, I think Elliott might be a good higher dollar play or single entry play in this scenario. But, it's just tough because it's really hard to be that contrarian in high dollar, because you're risking throwing away a lot more money than if you just had a $10 entry on a play that's less likely to hit. But in terms of leverage, is probably a better leverage play. But you also make the argument, well, at higher dollar, I don't need to go that contrarian. But what I'm saying is I think he's a good play only because he's Chase Elliott. He would normally be a better play at low dollar, but because he's Chase Elliott, I think he's a better play at high dollar. If it was flipped, I would say Denny Hamlin would be the better, if Denny Hamlin was starting second and Elliott was starting sixth, and let's say they were flipped in terms of the exact teams and starting positions and salaries, but Denny Hamlin was hated, then I would say Hamlin would be a great big GPP play in Elliott's scenario. But because Elliott is adored, it's not going to be as good.
Yeah. I really like Chase Elliott today. Like my algorithm says he's going to win it. So I like Elliott as uncomfortable as it is. I do like pairing him with Larson in a lineup.
And that's what I said. The correlation with the teammates there.
Yep.
I would bump up correlation with teammates because I think the ultimate outcome, the end of race outcome, we're going to see either Larson and Elliott had a lot of fastest laps and finished well, or Hamlin and Truex had a lot of fastest laps and finished as well. And that doesn't mean there's anti-correlation between Truex and Hamlin or between Truex and Larson or Truex and Elliott or Hamlin and Elliott or Hamlin and Larson. It just means there's positive correlation between the teammates. So I wouldn't say, I'm going to do an anti-correlation in Fantasy Labs, optimizer between the JGR and the Hendrick guys. I'm just going to do a positive correlation with the teammates. It's still possible, Larson grabs a lot of fast laps in the short run and Truex grabs a lot in the long run, but in the final finishing, but that also means the same thing is probably going to happen with Hamlin and Elliott, so the positive correlation between Larson and Truex and the positive correlation between Larson and Elliott and the positive correlation between Truex and Hamlin is what I want to play off of if you're mass multi-entering. Now, if you're doing 150 lineup type thing, that's what I want to put into the optimizer.
Yeah. So high dollar and single entry, I use interchangeably because it's the same mindset. They get chalkier for both. So Elliott is going to be lower owned in high dollar and single entry and high dollar single entry than he is in the massive GPPs. So I like Elliott even more when it comes to the high dollar single entries in that scenario this weekend. We talked about Briscoe earlier. I love Briscoe. I love the Briscoe play today. We're both on it as a good play. I think I probably like it a little bit more, but yes, definitely on Briscoe today.
I think I like it more.
Really?
I was the one who mentioned Briscoe, and you're like, oh, I wrote him up. And you were like, oh. So I guess we both like him a lot. Oh. I like him, and we talked about Briscoe. We like him especially at high dollar. He's fine, totally fine at low dollar, but especially at high dollar, he's going to have less ownership. Whereas somebody like Corey LaJoie, who we also both like as a contrarian play, is probably a better low dollar contrarian play than high dollar contrarian play. And the reason is LaJoie is so much more contrarian. He's so much more risky. You want to embrace that risk in the massive tournament. Whereas in a high dollar, you only need a little more risk. And so that's where we'd rather go Briscoe. I mean, as our, as our contrarian play.
I must have misunderstood you there. I thought you just kind of like Briscoe, but he's probably going to be on the majority of my lineups today, and I'm just going to roll with it. And again, off of high dollar, and I run into this issue myself a lot, and we talk about it frequently. Is knowing what contest you're in and knowing the mindset of the people in it. I have a tendency to get very, very contrarian with my lineups, and it rarely works out in high dollar. My biggest hits this year in high dollar have been, I remember back to Pocono where I think it was Cole Custer or someone was complete chalk. And all I did was I went chalk lineup and I took him out and I went to the next guy. And that's what won me 10 grand. So
so build your chalkiest lineup and then find a good pivot, usually with, like you said, a Cole Custer or in this case, maybe an Austin Dillon pivot off of him. Cause I think, or Chris Buescher pivot off of one of those two. Or a McDowell or a Priest, because I think those guys are going to be pretty chalky, and throw in either a Bubba Wallace or a Chase Briscoe or, God forbid, a Corey LaJoie in high dollar. I'd rather do that in low dollar, but yeah, absolutely.
Suarez, nobody talking about him.
He's dock blocked. Oh, no, he's not dock blocked. Who's dock blocked? Stenhouse is dock blocked. We haven't even mentioned him this week, but Suarez ran a pretty good 5-lap. Fell off on the 10 lap. What I'm thinking is he probably came in on that 10th lap and it somehow got, it gets recorded because that's not a real representative 10 lap average. So only look at the 5 lap for Suarez. It was actually pretty good. I don't have any thoughts or feelings on him either way. Finished 21st at Phoenix earlier this year, finished 16th at Richmond, finished 20th at New Hampshire, and 17th at Richmond. So he's probably going to finish right around where he started, which doesn't make him a super great play at $6,800.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. If I'm hand building lineups, I'm not getting to Suarez.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Jones had a better 5-lap than Daniel Suarez. And Eric Jones starts 10 spots further back and is only $300 more expensive.
All right. Any more questions before we wrap this thing up? Hour and 40 minutes. Jeez. I
Yeah,
realize it's that quick.
It's a good show. All right, we got to go through our predictions, right?
Right.
So, predictions on the championship, Jordan.
Just based on how my weekend is going so far, Chase Elliott is going to win this thing. That's that's where I'm at.
Him, right? Your model has them too.
Yep. That's
your algorithm. Yeah.
When that popped like that, I was like, oh.
Yeah, my algorithm has Denny Hamlin as best average finish, Kyle Larson as best upside. I'm gonna go with Denny Hamlin, even though I really like Truex as well, and I do like Larson, just because of the difference between short and long runs. I'm gonna go with Denny Hamlin. He finds a way to get it done, and doesn't choke for once. So that's gonna be my call, and it's not because I'm a Denny Hamlin fan. I just feel like, he's been so incredibly consistent this year, and I think that consistency has been on a lot of different tracks, types, etc. But the short, flat 750s have arguably been his best, even though, his wins this year have come at Darlington and Las Vegas. He dominated second Richmond. He dominated first Richmond. He was really good at Phoenix. New Hampshire, he got caught up in the rain incident, which wasn't really his fault, and was still up there in green flag speed, I think. So I'm going to go with Denny Hamlin.
You remember my prediction before on stacking Denny's before the playoffs started?
Yep.
I said Hamlin 3 wins and championship. This would be a third win in the championship. Speaking of, after seeing, practice data, qualifying, you think it's more likely or less likely that a non-championship driver wins today?
Less likely.
Compared to our thoughts from earlier this week.
I think it's very likely to be a championship 4 driver. I mean, you look at short run speed, it's Larson. If you look at long run speed, it's Truex. But Blaney's kind of interesting. I mean, he had the best 10 and 20 lap average. Truex didn't make a 20 lap run, so I'm curious how that would play out. But I think it's more likely because the fastest short runs were the Hendrick guys, the fastest long runs were essentially the JGR guys. Blaney could factor in. You never can count out Logano or Harvick at this place, but I think it's more likely than not. And I think it could come down to short run versus long run. Interesting, though, I did say JGR yesterday had great long run speed, but a lot of late restarts, and Hemrick ended up beating Cindric on a short run there at the end. But I mean, that's kind of just beating and banging almost in a way. As long as you can keep neck and neck with them, you can put the bumper to him, as Hemrick did, and he didn't maliciously put the bumper. He just tapped him in the left rear, totally fair game, and got him loose enough that he was able to get under him and edge him out, edge Cindric out for the win there. If it comes down to late restarts, you got to give the edge to Hendrick. If it comes down to a 50 lap run at the end or an 80 lap run at the end or whatever, got to give the edge, I think, to JGR. And don't know. Other than that, I mean, if you get a lot of short runs at the end there, anything can happen, which is why I actually favor a JGR. Because long run favors JGR, short run favors Hendrick, but there's more randomness in a short run. So I could see Denny Hamlin putting the bumper. I mean, Joey Logano, he has nothing to lose. Kevin Harvick, he has nothing to lose. Ryan Blaney, I mean, the only thing you would have to lose is his friendship with Chase Elliott if it came down to bumping Elliott for the win. But those guys don't have anything to lose. They could pressure one of these championship drivers for a win. And the championship driver, if they feel that contact, they might have to give way just to let one of those guys win. So I think if it's a short run, we get a whole lot of variance. In a long run, it favors JGR. So I think if I were a betting man, I'd take JGR over Hendrick in, if there was a prop, Hendrick versus JGR to win, I would take JGR.
Ironically, so I think we all expected the truck race to have a bunch of cautions. That one went green. And then the Xfinity race, we expected to go green, and that one had a bunch of cautions.
Yeah.
I think today's race is going to be a lot of green flag. I don't think we're going to see, outside of a David Starr mess up, I don't think we're going to see much caution. So if Truex Jr. wins this race, I'm going to be a very happy man. I got my lucky Undertaker shirt on. This thing is like plus $22,000 this year when I wear it. So let's go Truex and let's add to that title or that total.
There you go. I'll be happy if Truex wins on the wallet side. I'll be happy if Denny Hamlin wins on the fan side. And I'll be happy if Kyle Larson wins on the he's dominated this year side.
Mm-hmm. So you know what that means.
Chase Elliott.
Exactly. Chase Elliott's going to win because you didn't mention
over.
him, and it's the worst possible case for me. Like this is how this weekend's going.
It's gonna be Logano. Well, if Logano wins, I'll be happy on the wallet side, but I'm not a Logano fan. I think we all know that. I'm not a Joey Logano fan. But it would be like, or maybe it'll be like Blaney wins and Chase Elliott finishes second, and I'll be really pissed.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap this up. I got to make some lineups, and thanks to everybody that stuck around for this long. NFL is almost starting. Good luck with your lineups today, and root for Martin Truex Jr. And
keep an eye out on our Twitter feeds. I know I'm going to probably drop in a couple more bets on my Twitter feed as I go through various books and sites and all these things to figure out what's available. And even if it's not available to me, I'll tweet out what I think is a good bet, as I sometimes do when I see something that I can't bet in my area, but you might be able to bet in your area. So keep an eye on Twitter feeds. Good luck, everybody. And thanks for a great season.
Yep. See ya.